another video about Porto and yet another controversy. Honestly, if I hadn't already said I'm a Porto fan, I'd totally understand anyone calling me a Benfica supporter every single time I post a video or an update. The truth is, even though some people might see this as an attempt to stir things up, to me, it's one of the most fascinating stories, not just in Portuguese football, but in world football. And I, who have been deeply involved with the club in the past, feel I have the right to throw in my 2 cents and maybe enlighten some of you who would rather blindly pick a side. The saga of Francisco Conceição's transfer has seemingly come to an end, but there is way more to it than what you think you know. Is the Conceição clan selfish? Is Porto a club full of ungrateful people? You'll be the judge of that by the end of this man gossip type of video, but first, let me give you some context. First, for those who don't know, Sergio Conceicao was born in a small village near Coimbra, and his early years weren't easy at all. Sergio was one of 8 children in a big family with very few resources, who, funnily enough, were sporting fans. A lot of us complain that life is tough and that we want to become someone, but for Sergio, there was literally no other option. He spent months and months trying to convince his father to let him go to Porto, but his father was strict and unyielding, until one day he changed his mind. I imagine that must have been one of the happiest days in young Sergio's life, but just a day later, his father died in a motorbike accident. Sergio saw it all. He was called to the road where his dad had crashed, got a glimpse of his father lying there, and later found out he hadn't survived. His mother couldn't support him. She was wheelchair bound, and just 2 years later, she passed away as well, just like one of his brothers. Amid all this misfortune, Pinto da Costa extended a hand. He welcomed him as if he were his own son, and that's how young Sergio took his first steps as a football player. Porto gave him a chance, and even though his best playing years were spent in Italy, it was Pinto da Costa who launched his career, and for Sergio, a man who, like it or not, lives by principles and values loyalty above all, that relationship meant more than any personal or financial success. That's why he accepted the role of head coach at Porto in 2017, knowing he would earn less than half of what he was making at Nantes. Knowing he was walking into a chaotic situation where Porto hadn't won a trophy in 4 years. 7 years later, he would leave the club. And putting the off-pitch matters aside for a second, which we'll get to, I think it's undeniable he left Porto in a better state than what he found it. Back in 2017, Porto lacked identity, lacked fighting spirit. The club had forgotten what it meant to win. Even the way they approached big games felt completely disconnected. Sergio brought back the pride of pounding your chest, the unity of the squad no matter what phase they were in, vividly seen in the traditional post-match huddle. He may have never learned how to lose, but he brought back the ability to win to a fan base that had forgotten what it felt like to go honking down the streets of Porto in celebration. He became a legend, a cult figure, but if it was all sunshine and roses, I wouldn't be making this video, would I? Conceição was always stubborn, with a hunger to win that was stronger than any awareness of financial reality. And even though the bad transfers were always blamed on the board's incompetence, I think time has made it clear, even from Pinto da Costa himself while still alive, that many of those signings happened because of Conceição. And many other players didn't leave at better times because of Conceição. I could list case after case, but for the sake of relevance, let's focus on the market journey of Francisco Conceição. Promoted to the first team midway through his debut senior season, Chico had everything it takes to become the next big blue and white prodigy. Maybe not right away, but his ability to shake up a game was electric. Combined with his relationship with the manager, he became a fan favorite in the Invictus City. But right after his first full season with the senior squad, Chico left Porto to play for Ajax. That transfer already felt out. But even weirder was Porto letting an €8 million asset go for barely more than €5 million. And that was just the beginning. A year later, after Otávio was sold and Gabriel Verón flopped, Porto could have gone after any winger. But surprisingly, they went for the Ajax player, Chico Conceição. At first, it was a loan, but in the same week the 2024 elections were happening, Pinto da Costa officially announced Chico's signing for about €10 million double what Ajax had paid. And on top of that, the kid came in with a particularly interesting contract. Every year, between June 15 and July 15, his release clause would drop from 45 to 30 million euros. And if he were to leave permanently, Schick would get 20% of the transfer fee. I don't know about you, but this sounds like one of those presents rich grandfathers give their favorite grandkids. It feels tailor-made, solely for the benefit of the player. And come on, last I checked, the club's name was Futebol Clube do Porto, not Futebol Clube dos Conceição. If Messi and Ronaldo never got this kind of treatment, how is it possible that a financially small club like Porto could afford these kinds of luxuries? It might sound strange, but it's actually pretty simple to understand. Pinto da Costa was in his final days, as president and as person. I don't know if he believed he'd win or not, call it desperation for votes, call it helping out his own, whatever you wanna call it. He signed Chico and extended Sergio's contract. Sergio, who just months earlier had promised he wouldn't get involved in elections, now clearly took a side. In the end, loyalty spoke louder than keeping a promise. And just like that, Conceição, along with the Madureiras and the entire previous administration, lost the respect of a large part of Porto's fanbase. After Villas-Boas' victory, Sergio's departure was inevitable. Now, as for his replacement, Vitor Bruno had been Sergio's assistant since 2011. His whole career, he owed it to Sergio, which is why everyone was shocked when Vitor started being linked to the head coach job. He could have turned it down, he could have stayed quiet, but instead he publicly denied any connection to the job. And then, just a few days later, Sergio Conceicao ends his contract with Porto and Vitor Bruno takes over as head coach. And to top it off, at his presentation, this clown comes out with, "I sleep on the applause of my conscience. Applause of my conscience, my ass!" There's no way to look at this other than betrayal. The fact that Vitor was probably approached before the season ended, the fact he told Sergio nothing, the fact he denied it when the rumors started, that was betrayal. Period. And in that context, can we really blame Chico for not wanting to stay at Porto? Would you keep working under someone who had just stabbed your father in the back? But if I remember correctly, Vitor Bruno didn't even finish the season. Anselmi came and went. And now we've got Farioli at the helm. So why not return to the club of your heart? Does Chico see Villas-Boas as a traitor too? Well, this is where things get murky. Ultimately, Villas-Boas always put Porto's interests first, as heartless as that might seem to some people. I don't think Pep, even at 42, was worse than any other centre-back in the squad, nor do I think his 1.5 million euro salary was too much for what he could still offer. But his ties to the old regime were undeniable. Personally, I think getting rid of Pep has been Villas-Boas' biggest mistake so far. But everything else, it made sense from a rational point of view. Sergio couldn't stay as coach. Everywhere he's been, even at Olhanense, Sergio always put sporting goals above financial stability, and that put him at odds with every club president. Vitor Bruno made sense, even if it didn't work. He knew the squad. He agreed to earn less than 1 million euros a year, while Conceição was costing the club 7 million euros gross per season. And Villas-Boas also managed to save what could have been a disastrous deal with Juve for Chico, pulling in 42 million euros in total when the worst case scenario would have been just 24 million, or keeping a player who didn't even want to be there. Those are the facts. Now, you can say that business should always be seen rationally, that Conceição was too big of a financial and emotional burden for what he gave back, or you can humanize the situation. You can empathize with the loyalty between Pinto da Costa and Sergio Conceicao, the kind of bond some of you might have with someone who ultimately means more than football itself. This time, I'm not picking sides. Genuinely, I can't. I feel like everyone has a point, and everyone made mistakes in how they handled it. But I want to hear from you. Was the Conceição family betrayed by FC Porto? Or did they take advantage of the club? Let me know what you think in the comments. I read every single one of them. And if you've made it this far, this channel clearly means something to you. So subscribe to Thorn FC. This is where you'll find the rawest, realest and most human stories in Portuguese football. And if you're already part of the crew, then show some love on Instagram. Help me pick the next topics, improve every video, and keep giving a voice to the football we all love. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.